so let's talk Charles Leclerc first before Lewis. The discussion has been, of course, about Charles Leclerc, who ended up finishing P4 and losing his absolute rag on the radio. And then he dialed it back. And supposedly it was a chassis issue, in air quotes there. But he was still very quite cryptic and not releasing a lot of information on it. George Russell then came out in an interview and said, well, we noticed considerably that they were slower in the second stint on lighter fuel down the straights, which is odd. You'd expect them to be picking the pace up a little bit more because you've got a lighter car at the end of the day. And he said he believes that they had to raise the ride height of their car via tyre pressures. So when Leclerc was talking about the change in the car, we thought, where has that change come from? There's only a certain amount of things that you can change on the car without breaking Part 30 rules, the front wing angle, etc., tyre pressures, and that is where we believe the issue has maybe come from, and that's what Charles could feel, is that they've added tyre pressure to that last hard set of compound tyres, which has helped raise the ride height. So you've got more air in the tyres, and that means that the ride height is raised so that you're not grounding out so much, because there was analysis of the Ferrari in the first stint where that plank was dragging along the floor. The floor of the Ferrari was dragging and throwing up a lot of sparks, considerably more than any other car on the grid, it looked like, especially towards the front. So as the race has gone on, Ferrari have felt, oh, we've got an issue here with our ride height, which has been going on since the start of the season, hence why they got disqualified in China. And, well, they've had to address it, basically. So you add tyre pressures, you add pressure to the tyres, you're going to go slower. And there's also the rumour, I guess, or the analysis that they also turned the engine down as well, which also contributed to a lack of top speed, which is what Connor has sent to us. So let's have a look, Connor. Let's have a look. Here we go here. So this is what you sent to us. And this is Leclerc on lap 8 in his first stint. And this is lap 47. So you've got lap 8, which is slower in the red there. And you've got Leclerc on the white there, which is a quicker lap, which you'd understand as in the closing stages of the race in the second stint as the fuel gets lighter. So why does he then, here in this first section, this is basically the start-finish straight here, into the braking zone of turn 1, why does the white line dip considerably below the red line at the end of the start-finish straight? That is what we're looking at here. So that is a clear indication that out of the last corner, he is quicker, more deployment, and then it slows and it starts to level off and slow as he's getting further down the straight. And that's where George Russell was saying, well, that's where we've noticed that they were considerably slower down the end of the start-finish straight. Whereas at the start of the race, he has got a continued build in speed. It's a slower exit, which you'd understand because, of course, it's the start of the race. The car's a lot heavier as well. But you can see that gradual increase there. But it just keeps going and going and going and going. And it only levels off once, of course, he hits the peak top speed and hits probably, no doubt, the rev limiter and then hits the braking zone. So that is where George Russell has been pointing that out. And that is, why would you do that? Well, as Connor has said, they deployed earlier in the straight and less of straight in the final stint. And the reason you do that is because there's then less squatting of the rear of the car under braking. So the higher the top speed you have, of course, the more braking force you have to apply and the more just physics, the more G's that you're going to have on top of your car, the more force, and the lower the car is going to squat, which means, of course, the plank is going to more likely scrape along the track surface. Whereas if you go slower towards the end of the straight, you're not going to need as much brake pressure, of course, to try and slow the car down, and the car isn't going to squat as much, meaning that the plank is less likely to hit the track surface. And, well, if you compare this to what Connor also put in relation to Lewis Hamilton, if you look at Lewis Hamilton's, so it's kind of altered here. So you've got the red, lap 31 is his first stint anyway, only did 2 stints, didn't he? But if you look at it, it's pretty level it's pretty level in relation to where the deployment is. Of course, you always expect a bit of difference and a bit more top speed as, of course, you are getting lighter. But that's a clear indication there that that was an issue with Charles. So I hope that makes sense, guys. I hope that makes sense there, and that's why, really, George has picked that up in an interview from just visual alone. And when you're traveling at those speeds, you can definitely see visually, and you can see it in like a sim and stuff, the closing speeds. If there is like even just a few kilometers an hour difference in a car from a few laps prior, you will be able to notice that quite dramatically from behind the cockpit. So for us visually, when it comes to TV coverage, sometimes it could be a bit different, but the drop-off was substantial. So there was a lot of management there. And Lewis was also... This was a... Ferrari are not in a good place right now. Now, it wasn't confirmed until afterwards, but there's a lot of radio coverage that Lewis Hamilton, for the majority of the race, had to look after his brakes. He was doing a considerable amount of brake management throughout that race. He had to do a lot of engine management in Spa as well, even though he had a brand new engine. And he was only really able to let loose in kind of like the last 10 laps, supposedly. And that's when he started to obviously make a bit more ground. But yeah, Ferrari are not in a good place right now. I've criticised them for the concept that they've done. They've just made a shit car this year. Excuse my language, but they have done. They've made a terrible car this year. They have gone backwards. I think they've genuinely gone backwards compared to going forwards. Like, how can you create a car that cannot... That has... Yes, they're always going to run the car at limits, but this car, they're actually having to consciously turn things down and ask the drivers to back off to ensure that they don't get disqualified. Like, it's just terrible for them. Terrible.